person, Abimelech, is Gideon's son. Gideon, after he defeated the Midianites with God's help, the people said, "We want you to be our king." And he said, "No, I can't be your king. God is the only king." And that sounds noble. But then he seems to have lived like a king, and he had many wives and concubines, and he had 7 sons. And one of those by a concubine is this person, Abimelech. And it's interesting that he named his son that. And the text says he did name him, because the word for father is that A-B there. We get Abba from that, or Abraham is part of his name. And then M-E-L-E-C-H is the word for king. And so what his name means is, my father is king. And Gideon said, "No, I don't want to be king." Then he names his son, "My father is king." But we're in chapter 9, and this is Abimelech decides he wants to be king, because Gideon has died at this point. And we saw this last week, and really in this section, I'm going to come back to the other slide. 1 through 21 is about his rise to power, and it's through corruption, through political corruption. And then 22 through 57 is his fall. And those last 2 verses that Kent read there tell us that God is the one who brought him down. Now, God didn't just strike him dead. He providentially worked through different people in this. Because Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem is a place, a village, were guilty of murder and political corruption, and so God is going to bring judgment upon them. So this is a chapter, or the whole chapter about political corruption, and that's still modern. That hadn't left humans. It was back this time. It's been in every time. It's still now. And one person suggested, here's some things that have to do with political corruption, and we see it in this text here as well. There are special interest groups. In the early verses of chapter 9, Abimelech wants to be king, and so he gets in touch with his mother's relatives there in Shechem. They're the special interest group. The special interest group have a lot to gain when their leader, their person, is in power. So the special interest group are Abimelech's relatives here. And lobbying, the special interest group use their means to influence their leaders to get what they want, and that's often at the expense or the suffering of others. So the people of Shechem, and especially Abimelech's relatives, if we have him as our king, then we can get whatever we want, and it doesn't matter how everybody else might suffer during this. Money is always a key thing in political corruption. It was back here. Money was necessary because there were others that were that could make the same claim as Abimelech. He has 70 brothers. So what do you do with 70 brothers out there if he said, "Yeah, I should be the king"? He takes care of them, and that's a euphemism. He has them murdered. And getting a person elected, even today, takes a lot of money, but it's those who give the money often benefit from that. And so there's money that's involved, and then violence, as I mentioned. There are always those who will do evil and violent acts to eliminate the competition. And that's what Abimelech does. He had 70 of his brothers are murdered. And the men of Shechem they're involved in that because they give the money to pay for that. And they expect to be rewarded because they've invested all of this. And then finally the people. The people are the general population, and they're interested in what benefits they might get from the government or from the king. Here's Abimelech. And sometimes then they will look the other way when evil is being committed by those seeking political power. So we have all those things in this text, and that's in every age, I think, in every government. And so this, in a sense, is a modern text. Whereas humans haven't changed, God hasn't changed. Humans are still sinful, and God is still holy. Now what we're going to see, the main point of this text, the last two verses there that Kent read, is that God will bring judgment upon evil. And that's political evil, as any kind of evil. All right, let's go back to chapter 9, and let's look at verse 20. We'll pick up verse 22. So chapter 9, 1 through 21 is Abimelech's rise to power. And he rises to power by convincing his relatives, I should be the king, and getting rid of his 70 brothers who would challenge him. And the men of Shechem, the leaders of Shechem, are involved in all of that. In verse 22, then it begins. It doesn't work out maybe the way that they think it's going to work out. So look at verse 22. Now Abimelech ruled over Israel for 3 years. Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. And the leaders of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, so that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal would come, and the responsibility for their blood would be placed on their brother Abimelech, who killed him, and on the leaders of Shechem, who encouraged him to kill his brothers. They encouraged him to kill his brothers. The leaders of Shechem set up men in ambush against him on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed everyone who would pass by them on the road, and it was reported to Abimelech. It might be significant, verse 22, that the writer tells us that he commanded Israel for 3 years. Notice it doesn't say he was king over Israel for 3 years. It just says he ruled over Israel for 3 years. And the leaders of Shechem made him as their king, but the author, it seems, doesn't regard him as a king in reigning. And so there's a different word that's used here. Now God then, because of the evil that was done, God is going to bring judgment. And notice in verse 23 how he does this. Now it's interesting that he ruled for 3 years and then judgment came. So judgment came pretty quick in that here. It doesn't always come quickly like that. It might be even the whole lifetime, and judgment might not become upon those who do evil. But they will stand before God in judgment because of that. The judgment comes pretty quickly here, and it began with God sending an evil spirit. So now the two buddies, Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem, are divided by an evil spirit from the Lord. And I don't know all the details about that. Maybe some demonic spirit that God allows. Now just 3 years earlier, they're buddies, they're allies in this political corruption. Now these same folks are trying to get at each other's throats. And God is working in that, is what the writer is telling us. He wants us to see very clearly, not only the last two verses that we heard, but this verse 24, that he's the one that's causing the fall of Abimelech and of the leaders of Shechem. He wants us to see that very clearly. Now notice again, he didn't just send down a lightning strike and kill them. God sent an evil spirit between them. And that's causing problems between them, this treachery. And in verse 25, the people of Shechem, the leaders of Shechem, rebelled against Abimelech, and they put robbers or bandits in the hills so they could rob people as they go along the roads. Now, how could they hide out on the top of the mountains and then rob people as they're going down in the road down below? There are no roads at the top of the mountains. The roads are at the bottom of the mountains. How are they doing that? These are not really high mountains. It's that they could be in these hills and they could look down and see someone coming along, and then they just run down and rob them. And they're hired to do that, I think. And word's going to reach the king. Isn't the job of the king to protect his citizens? And so word's going to get back to him, and maybe even if Abimelech comes by chance, we'll just kill him too, because we're about tired of him, because they have this evil spirit that's been sent by God. And so Abimelech must die because he has 70 of his brothers murdered, but the leaders of Shechem must be punished and must die as well. And so God is involved in this. Now Abimelech hears about this, and he's angry, and something's going to happen. It's going to happen pretty soon. So look at verse 26. And we have a new person that's introduced here. So verse 26, now Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his relatives and crossed over into Shechem, and the leaders of Shechem trusted him. So they went out to the field and gathered the grapes of their harvest and trampled them and held a festival. And they went into the house of their God and ate and drank and cursed Abimelech. Then Gaal, the son of Ebed, said, "Who's Abimelech? Who's Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is Zebul not his governor? Serve the men of Kamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? If only this people were under my authority, then I would do away with Abimelech." And he said to Abimelech, "Enlarge your army and come out and face me." So notice in verse 26, it just so happens that now a new person arrives in Shechem. And his name is, there on the screen, Gaal. And he comes with his brothers, he comes with his relatives. And it says the leaders put their trust, verse 26, the leaders of Shechem trusted him. They put their trust in him. One of the problems of the leaders of Shechem is they're putting their trust in Abimelech and in this guy, and they're not putting their trust in God. They're putting their trust in the wrong person. And so one idea that it's even reflected in some of the translation is the leaders were persuaded by Gaal. So they trusted in Gaal, they didn't trust in God. Now how all this came about then is given, and there are clues here that we see. But it tells us that they went out to the fields, gathered the grapes of the harvest, trampled them, and they held a festival. And they held this festival in the house of their pagan god. That tells us about these people. So, as one person put it, the bar is now open in the temple of this pagan god. And Gaal is there under the influence, probably. He gains courage, and he begins to say out loud, public, probably what he'd been thinking for a while, and he cursed Abimelech. And he's boasting, and he says, if he were right here, I'd take care of him. He said, he's going to send his army against me. I can take care of him, and we'll see who's supposed to be king. I mean, y'all put your trust in this guy, I can take care of him. Now, earlier, Abimelech said, I'm the best guy for the job, and I should be king because I have family, I have roots in Shechem. He's talking to his mother's family that's there. And Gaal says, well, I have roots that go back further than that. And he talks about even the founder of Shechem in verse 28, Kamor. He says, who's Abimelech? Who's Shechem? We serve him. Serve the men of Kamor, the father of Shechem. Now, while this is going on, it seems Abimelech didn't have his headquarters in Shechem. He's sort of like an absentee king. There's a map. That big red dot thing there is probably, we learn from verse 41, where Abimelech is. And if you look up to, you go up and then you look left, right across from Gilgal, you see Shechem. So he's not in, Abimelech is not in Shechem. He's probably down there with his headquarters. And Gaal says, why are we serving him anyway? I can trace my descendants back. If somebody wants to make to be king and for the throne on heritage, I can go back further than him. All right, look at verse 30 now, the report, Zebul's report. He's the governor, and then his recommendation. So verse 30, when Zebul, the leader of the city, So Gaul's walking around, he's at this drinking party, and he's bragging, I'll take care of Abimelech. He's nothing. Well, when Zebul, the leader of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger burned. So using deception, he successfully sent messengers to Abimelech, saying, Behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, his relatives have come to Shechem, and behold, they're stirring up the city against you. So now, arise by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. Then in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, you shall rise early and attack the city. And behold, when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you shall do to them whatever you can. So, Abimelech's absentee king, he's off somewhere else. The governor here that's been appointed, I guess, over the city, he hears about this Gaal's boasting, and he sends message to Abimelech, and he says, there's this guy, and you guys showed up, and he's speaking against you. And then he recommends what Abimelech should do. He says, you come, before it gets light, you and your army come, and you hide out in the mountains around, and lie in wait in the fields. And then when morning comes, you attack. And this attack is in a couple of phases here. Phase 1 is verse 34 through 41, this attack on Shechem. So he does exactly what the governor suggests. Look at verse 34. So Abimelech and all the people who were with him got up at night and lay in wait against Shechem in 4 units. Now Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood at the entrance of the city gate, and Abimelech and the people who were with him arose from the ambush. When Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains. But Zebul said to him, you're seeing the shadow of the mountains, as if they were people. And Gaal spoke yet again, and he said, look, people are coming down from the highest part of the land, and 1 unit's coming by way of the diviner's oath. Then Zebul said to him, where then is your boasting with which you said, who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Is this not the people whom you rejected? Go out now and fight them. So Gaal went out in the sight of the leaders of Shechem and fought Abimelech. So this is phase 1, when Abimelech and army shows up before daylight, and there were, at this early hour, there'd be people at the gates and people going out into the vineyards to work. And then God looks at the mountains, the hills, and he sees movement, and he says, there's people up there. And Zebul said, no, it's just, you're seeing the shadow of the mountains. And then he says, no, and he moved again, and he said, this is the army out there. And then Zebul said, where's your big talk now? Because there's your army that you said that you would fight. You didn't go out and fight now. He's had enough of him. And so he goes out to fight. He drove him out of the city, Gaal and his relatives out of the city. This is describing, back up a little bit. You remember when Abimelech said, I want to be your king, or make me your king. And then look at verse 7 of this chapter. This is told, this is the brother that escaped. There were 70 that were murdered. This is the brother that was escaped. His name is Yotam. And he stood on the Mount of Mount Gerizim, and he told the leaders, listen, God, this is displeasing to God. And then he tells a little parable about the tree said, okay, we want an olive tree to be our king. And the olive tree said, no, I have better things to do. I provide oil. I'm not being the king. And he said to the fig tree, be our king. And the fig tree said, no, I have better things. I provide sweet figs, and I shouldn't be a king. And then they said to a vine, come reign over us. And the vine said, no, I provide for wine, and I'm not going to be your king. And then they said to a thorn bush, be our king. And the thorn bush said, if really you're anointing me as king over you, then come and take refuge under my shade. I mean, what kind of shade you have under a thorn bush? Anyway, really, But he says, if you're not really making me a king, then may fire come down and consume. And then Yotam makes this plain, and he says in verse 20 that fire will come out of Abimelech, consume the leaders of Shechem, and may fire come out of the leaders of Shechem and consume Abimelech. He's speaking God's word there, and this is coming to pass in the passages that follow. So that's phase 1. Phase 2, look at verse 42. So Abimelech goes out, and he fights Gaal goes out and fights Abimelech. Kind of hard to keep up with all these people. And then Abimelech chases him, and he fled. And so Abimelech stayed in that city as headquarters, and Zebul drove out Gaal. Now look at verse 42. It came about the next day that the people went out to the field, and it was reported to Abimelech. So he took his people, divided them into 3 units, laid away in the field. When he looked and saw the people coming out of the city, he attacked them and killed them. Then Abimelech and the company who was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the city gate. The other 2 companies then attacked all who were in the field, killed them. Abimelech fought against the city that whole day, captured the city, killed the people who were in it. He tore down the city and sold it with salt. So in the morning, it looked like the people thought, well, everything's back to normal. Abimelech's gone, Gaal's gone. We're not really in any danger, so it's not, you can't take the day off. You got to go to work. So they go out into the fields, their usual routine. Well, angry Abimelech comes again, and he's somebody who's always want to take vengeance and revenge. So he shows up again, divides men into several companies here, one to take the city, one to take the gates, and prevent people from escaping. And he captures the city and kills everybody in it, and completely destroys the city, sowing it with salt so that it appeared it would never be restored. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 is verse 46. When all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem heard about this, they entered the inner chamber of their pagan temple, this temple of El-Berith. And it was reported to Abimelech that all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech went up to Mount Zammon. He and all the people who were with him. Abimelech took an axe in his hand, cut down a branch from the trees, lifted it, put it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people who were with him, what you saw me do, hurry and do likewise. So all the people also cut down each one his branch, followed Abimelech, put them on top of the inner chamber, set the inner chamber on fire over those inside. And all the people of the Tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Thebez. So it's another village or city that's close by. We don't know where that is, and we don't know really what they did, but they must have done something to anger him. So he camped against Thebez and captured it, but there was a strong tower in the center of the city, and all the men and women with all the leaders of the city fled there, shut themselves in, and they went up on the roof of the tower. So Abimelech came to the tower, fought against it, approached the entrance of the tower to burn it down with fire. But a woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, crushing his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, draw your sword and kill me, so that it will not be said of me, a woman killed him. So the young man pierced him through, and he died. Now when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, each left for his home. So this is phase 3, attack on Shechem, and then it spreads out to this neighboring place. I mean, they first get inside this tower, and Abimelech has a brilliant thought, miles and burn them out. So he goes and chops some trees down and bring this fire. And this fire from Abimelech, just like we were told by Jotham earlier, destroys the leaders of Shechem. Then he goes to that other village, as we said, Thebez, or the city, and again, we don't know anything about it, we don't know what they did, but they angered Abimelech in some way, so he's going to burn them down. I mean, he was successful at Shechem, and and they get into a tower. In his arrogance, he draws too close to that. And there's a picture of like an artist. And so he's within reach of an enemy projectile, which is this upper millstone. Why have a millstone on top of that tower anyway? Some have suggested it might be you get up there and the enemy lays siege, and you could be up there for a long time. You couldn't get down. Maybe they had supplies up there, provisions, and they had a millstone where they could use that. Grain could be up there. But there's a millstone, and a woman gets to the edge, and I mean, this will weigh like, 50 pounds, and drops it from the top of that tower, and it crushes the skull of Abimelech. There's a picture that the upper part is the upper millstone. One person writes about this. It would be about 12 to 18 inches in diameter, several inches thick. He says 27 pounds. Maybe I was a little too much on 50, but probably about 30 or 40 something. It's a heavy object, and it broke his skull. Now what's interesting, look back at chapter 9, verse 5. This is the murder. He went to his father's house in Ophrah, killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. Look at verse 18. In fact, you have risen against my father's house today and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone. And then 9:53, but a woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head, crushing his skull. It's almost like poetic justice. The punishment fixed the crime. He killed his brothers on one stone. Now he is killed, or his skull is crushed by one stone. Now it's one thing for a soldier to die in battle of the enemy, but it's another thing. The king dies when a woman pushes a stone off of a tower and it crushes his skull. That's not too noble. And he's still alive when this happens, and so he knows, and so he tells one nearby, don't say that a woman killed me, so take your sword and kill me. Now this goes on, this story was told down through Israel. We're about to run out of time, but David knows the story in 2 Samuel 11 and verse 21, when he tells Joab to tell Uriah to get close to the tower, and he does, and he's killed in battle. And then David says, well, if somebody says, why don't you get too close? You can say, well, it's just like what happened back there to Abimelech. He got too close to the wall, and then this happened. So seeing that the leader is dead, the followers of Abimelech give up their fight and leave the people in the tower unharmed. Now, we heard 56 and 57 from Ken. I want to read them again. This is to God be the glory. God brings the judgment. So God repaid the wickedness of Abimelech, which he had done to his father in killing his 70 brothers. God also returned all the wickedness of the men of Shechem on their heads, and the curse of Jotam, the son of Jerubbaal, came upon them. We've been told that God sent the evil spirit, and now God worked in all these events, and the writer tells us that God brought the punishment. God is involved in this. And so corrupt government, sin, evil among people displeases God, and judgment will come. It might come in this life, it might not come in this life. Judgment comes pretty quickly here, 3 years, but doesn't always come quickly. There are a couple of people in Scripture who've been treated unjustly, and they cry out to God, how long is this going to happen? God may delay his judgment, but judgment will come. And we're going to close, but I want to go through the points of the lessons that I made last week from the first part of this text, just quickly. One is corruption comes from without and within. Israel is following other gods at this point, and so corruption comes there, but then corruption comes from within. Just like corruption comes, God's judgment can come from without and from within. And so God judges evil and corruption even in government. God's judgment is on those who trust government as an idol. The people of Shechem, they put their trust in Abimelech. Yeah, you be our king. You're like a thorn bush, but you be our king. And then this other guy comes along and they put their trust in him. They're trusting in the wrong person. They're trusting in government as an idol. And that's, God is the one who's in control. Government can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. And then I think with Abimelech, there's danger of too much power in one person. And that's always true. It's true in the church. That's why we have many elders. We're to have many elders, not just one ruling elder. The leadership that pleases God is servant leadership. And so there's danger of having too much power in one person, in whatever we're talking about. And then finally, God's judgment is on those who shed innocent blood. It may come in this life, might not come in this life, but God's judgment will come. 674 is the invitation song that Terry announced. There's a great day coming. And it is a great day if we are followers of the Lamb. And we're longing for that day. Meaning, Paul says that Philippians 2, we shine as lights in the middle of a wicked generation. We're right in the middle of a wicked generation as we shine as lights. And many times, all throughout history, at different points in history, society is very, very wicked. And it's almost like the light, you barely see the light shining. But we're called to be lights. We're called to put our trust in God, not in government, not in anyone else, not in any person. And we're to shine for God. We're to stand up for God and be faithful. And there is a great day coming. And sometimes God's people all throughout have longed for that day. Because it wears one down to be in the middle of a wicked and evil world. But that great day is coming. If you're not a Christian, it is a great day, but it will be a terrible day for you. But the good news is that God sent His Son to die for our sins, and so it can be a great day for you. You put your trust in Him as you repent, confess, and you're baptized. We're here to help you. If you need to come, we're praying to do that while we stand.